What if Spider-Man was actually in the boys' universe? That question has already been answered. Well, sort of. Allow us to explain. You see, guys, the boys' universe is known for creating parodies and analogs of existing superhero IPs. Or, more to the point, Garth Ennis and Derek Robertson love introducing twisted versions of mainstream superheroes within their fictional universe. That's pretty much the series' bread and butter. What is surprising, however, is the fact that the Boys comic book series seemingly ignored parodying one of the world's most famous masked vigilantes during its original run. And we're talking about none other than Marvel's friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. But here's the thing. The Boys comics did eventually get to adapting the wall crawler within its pages. It's just not how you would expect it to be. Meet Webweaver. He's basically, undoubtedly, the Boys universe's attempt at bringing the web slinger to their brutal, hilarious world. However, you'd be sorely disappointed if you were looking for actual issues where Webweaver appeared. In fact, this particular version of the Boys Spider-Man didn't even make a single appearance within the series. All we got was a cover image illustrated by Derek Robertson for the epilogue series called The Boys. And just to make things extra obscure, this sole depiction of Webweaver wasn't even on the main cover of that issue's solicitations. Instead, it was for the comic's Elite variant cover. Now, if you're not familiar with variant covers, suffice it to say that it's publishers' way of jacking up their sales by churning out alternative cover images for their comic books in limited quantities. So, it's no wonder that Webweaver was buried under everything else that the Boys comic book series had to offer. As far the guy's story goes, it doesn't fare much better. Webweaver was a character that was simply mentioned in passing. On the bright side, what little information about the character we have about him depicts Webweaver as an unusual superhero even in the Boys universe. For one, much like his Marvel counterpart, Webweaver had his own version of Uncle Ben. Except, Ennis and Robertson took it upon themselves to make this unnamed uncle extra saucy by mentioning that he was gay. The sad part, though, is we didn't get any further information about him other than that. More interestingly, it's been established within the series that Webweaver was one of those rare superheroes who didn't have their identity become public information. Whether it's Ennis and Robertson's way of making the character more similar to the OG Spider-Man, or if there's something more to it, we'll never know. Within the Boys universe, Webweaver is also referred to as the Thwipster, which pretty much confirms that he's based on the House of Ideas web-swinging superhero. Aside from that, we do know that Webweaver used to work for Vought American. Prior to the beginning of the series, the company assigned Webweaver to negotiate with the soups of the Soviet Union, with the aim of forming an international super team between Vought's payback and Russia's glorious 5-year plan. Now, we don't really know what happened during Webweaver's time in Russia, but what we do know is that this character's life took a fatal turn when Billy Butcher and Greg Mallory were about to establish the Boys. You see, before the Boys became a secret, fully funded government wetworks team designed to take out unruly soups, Billy and Greg had to prove to their superiors that they needed a proof of concept for what they were trying to do. Unfortunately for Webweaver, he was the proof of concept. That is to say, Billy and Greg absolutely bodied the guy. In turn, this proved to the government that the Boys was a feasible initiative, which then led to the group's establishment. And that was it. R.I.P. Webweaver. So, if you were wondering what would happen if Spider-Man was actually in the Boys universe, there's your answer, guys. But we know that isn't enough. So, if you want a more in-depth look at how the wall crawler would operate in the Boys universe, then look no further than the web series. At this point, we all know that the popular small-screen adaptation of The Boys took its own liberties to separate itself from its source material, and it has mostly worked out fine for the show. In fact, they pretty much did a spot-on job in creating their own parody version of Marvel's Spider-Man, with their depiction of Webweaver in his few appearances within the show's 4th season. For one, the web series did something that the comic books didn't. Tell us exactly how Webweaver's powers work. Yup, he was the Thwipster, all right. Unlike most depictions of Marvel Comics' Peter Parker, Webweaver possessed all organic webbing. You know, like the Sam Raimi movie version of Spider-Man. But, unlike Tobey Maguire, Webweaver has a more interesting way of shooting out his webs. Now, we won't go too much into detail about how Webweaver thwips around the city, but what we will tell you is that his webs come from the same place that freaky SOB Neil Gaiman loves to violate. As far as his story goes, the Boys web series gradually introduced us to their version of Spider-Man. First, we just get bits and pieces here and there, such as when the show first briefly mentioned his existence via a newsflash on the TV saying that he had a quote-unquote involuntary discharge at the Global Wellness Center. After that, we get another teaser for Webweaver, as the character is portrayed in 2D space when we see Homelander's kid Ryan, playing the Boys version of Mortal Kombat called Tournament of Heroes. Here, we get hints that Webweaver might not be an A-list celebrity superhero in his universe, but he had enough clout to warrant an appearance in Vought's product lines. We finally get to meet this particular version of the Boys Spider-Man in the 4th episode of Season 4 of the series. For some context, Billy and the boys had targeted Webweaver to serve as one of their superhero informants to get some dirt on another soup named Firecracker. Of course, they knew that this Vought lackey wouldn't just agree to their proposal, so they decided to add another layer to their plan. Aside from coaxing info about Firecracker, they had fellow The Boys member Huey impersonate Webweaver and infiltrate a party where Vought bigwigs would be attending. And man oh man, the way they got Webweaver's costume was a thing of beauty. First, Billy and MM spent a wad of cash to grab a bunch of enemas spiked with good old-fashioned smack, knowing that Webweaver is a junkie who can't say no to a good time. In one of the show's most hilarious sequences, MM was forced to administer the concoction to Webweaver in a scene that we can only describe as something that probably left that borderline criminal MF Neil Gaiman wiping himself with the 17th issue of his Sandman series. It proved to be very effective too, as Webweaver passes out from the laced enema shoved in his web shooters, allowing the boys to steal his costume for Huey and ordering him to sneak into the party. There, Huey found out that Webweaver was actually auditioning to be the sidekick of the party's host, the popular superhero Tech Knight. By sidekick, we mean that Tech Knight wanted to make Webweaver his freaky BDSM bottom. In any case, more hilarity ensued, and Huey and the boys were able to succeed in their mission. As for the real Webweaver, well, things just took an even darker turn for this arachnid-themed junkie version of Spider-Man. Not long after tripping balls from the boys' special enema, none other than Homelander paid him a visit. You see, Firecracker had snitched that Webweaver was the one who had been leaking information about them to Billy and the boys. And as we all know, Homelander isn't the reasonable type of guy. So, after a bit of groveling, Webweaver met his end when Homelander grabbed his web-spewing butt and went King Kong on him. That is to say, Homelander literally ripped his body in two. And, well, that was it for Webweaver. He was never mentioned again, much less become a focal point to the story. So, if you were wondering what would happen if Spider-Man became a part of the Boys universe, there's your more fleshed-out answer. It doesn't look pretty, but boy, is it one of the funniest things you could watch. There you have it, guys. We hope you like watching this video. And please, feel free to let us know what you think would happen if Spider-Man actually existed in the Boys universe in the comments section below. Please don't forget to give us a like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Go ahead and check out the next one while you're at it too. We'll see you real soon, only here at KRTV Marvel.